Riding 100 miles for the first time? Follow these tips to make sure it goes as smoothly as possible. Let's start first by checking over your equipment, because if there are any issues there, these could take the longest to rectify. 7 days ahead of your big planned ride or event, you should look to take out the exact same equipment that you plan to use for a short test spin. This way you can learn if there's anything wrong with your equipment, and you should still have time to put it right. I like to start by checking over my tyres, just looking for excessive signs of wear, any slits, tears, things like that could cause a puncture on the event day. Then I check that my brakes, they don't pull too far back to the bars, indicating that they maybe need bleeding or that they need new pads. I then check all of the bearings, making sure there's no excessive play and that they all spin freely as they should. And then finally, I do a gentle rattle of the bike, bouncing it on the ground. This just helps indicate if there are any loose bearings like a headset, bottom bracket or pedal bearings. You'll normally hear these sounding like a dull thud if there is something wrong. By doing this 7 to 10 days in advance of the event, you're just affording yourself enough time to repair or replace any items that need attention. After this, I think it's a really good idea just to make sure that batteries in things like power meters, gears, head units and lights are also fully charged. This is just really good practice to make sure that they don't go flat on you in the middle of your big ride. And then finally, it's really important just to ride the bike one more time the day ahead of the event. This just helps to make sure that everything's running smoothly and exactly as it should ahead of race day, and you still have just enough time to sort things out if you need to. A really important factor that you should not overlook is your freshness leading into the event. Your last big, long, hard training ride should be around 7 days prior to the event, and then 3 to 4 days ahead of the event, you should look to do one more ride with a few efforts that start edging towards that race pace that you expect to have on the event day. The whole training week in that final 7 days should have a reduced volume, allowing your body to freshen up from the training that you've been doing, which will help you to perform at your best when it comes to race day. 2 days ahead of the event, you should then have a complete rest day. So imagine the event is on the Sunday, take the Friday off, and then on the Saturday, do a short 45 to 90-minute ride with a couple of efforts, again, similar to the race pace that you expect to be maintaining on that big ride, just to make sure your body's well prepared and ready for the effort on the Sunday. Next up, we want to consider our fueling and hydration, not just on the ride, but also in the days leading up to it and in the final week ahead of the event. The last 48 hours ahead of the event are most important, because this is where we can look to replenish our stores in our muscles and in our body. To ensure that we're well fueled for the ride on the Sunday, we want to look to consume around 8 to 10 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight in that final 48 hours. And then you want to start considering how much you're going to be consuming on the ride. Before we touch on ride nutrition though, in the final 24 hours ahead of the ride, you also need to prioritize your hydration. Every gram of carbohydrate is stored with 3 grams of water or fluid in the body. Nutritional supplements like electrolytes will hydrate the body more effectively than just drinking water alone. Assuming you've eaten really well on the days leading into the event, on the morning of the event itself, you just want to make sure you eat a good breakfast that is rich in carbohydrate and has around 30 grams of protein in that breakfast. From here though, you want to start thinking about fueling with around 60 grams of carbohydrate every hour up until the start of the event. Supplementing this with around 500 ml of electrolyte mix or water to make sure you're hydrated correctly as well. Once the ride starts, you're almost going to need to consume as much as you feel comfortable doing, and there's absolutely no reason to wait. Why would you start depleting your stores before you start topping them up? Start consuming food or energy products within around 15 to 20 minutes at the beginning of the ride. Every time you eat, you should be looking to consume around 30 grams of carbohydrate, and that can be through fluids or through solids. There are many new products on the market that make the absorption of this much carbohydrate per hour much more achievable than was ever previously thought to be possible. Me personally, I like to alternate between a bar, a gel or a chew, and then electrolyte mix with carbohydrate powder in my bottle. That's going to provide me with around 120 grams of carbohydrate per hour. At least that's the goal. You're going to need 2 bottles on your bike, and you're going to need to look to refill these every 1.5 to 2 hours. You'll probably find it most beneficial to have some sort of mixture in your bottle, because this will hydrate you more effectively, though it can be nice to save one with just water, especially if you're consuming lots of sugary products. Clothing. There's no need to overthink your clothing. If you're riding in the hills or in a mountainous area, you may need to consider a variation of temperatures. Therefore, you might want to carry many lightweight but packable items. Things like arm warmers and gilets are very lightweight and easy to stow away in a pocket, but they are incredibly effective at protecting you from the elements. If it's a little cooler, obviously you might want to take a little bit more, or wear a little bit more in the first place. If you're aiming for a consistent effort, it will be much easier to regulate your body temperature, therefore you won't need to worry about as many spares. So if you're doing a solo ride, it might actually be easier to predict what you need to take with you. There is one thing I would say, that's if you're doing a group ride, such as a sportif or a big event like that, you'll be surprised at how much warmer you feel in an event like that. That's partly because of the adrenaline, the excitement, but also the fact that you're surrounded by other people. It's protecting you a little bit from the elements, and you'll notice that you will feel warmer than when you're riding by yourself at home. For example, if I was to go out today, it's around 15 to 17 degrees. I could quite happily get away with shorts and short sleeves, though if I was at home training, I'd probably wear a little bit more. Spares and repairs. It's a similar philosophy to the clothing principles from a moment ago. People quite often overthink this and end up carrying way too much. Essentially, if you have a pump, a tyre lever, an inner tube and a small multi-tool, you're probably going to be fine. If you look back over the last 100 miles of your cycling, statistically it's quite unlikely that you had a problem with your well-maintained bicycle. But that said, if you want to be extra prepared for your events day, by all means do so. Carry a quick link just in case there's a problem with your chain and an extra spare tube. You can always offer these to someone else in a time of need, because when we get excited, mistakes can be made. So it is wise to be prepared. On to pacing now, which is one of my favorite topics. If this is your first big ride, then your pacing is going to be especially important. Simply don't start out harder than you know you can sustain all the way to the end of the ride. Because if you start out too fast, you're going to dig yourself a hole that you won't be able to climb out of later. Meaning you'll have to slow down and allow your body to recover, and you'll finish much slower than had you eased into the ride, built up throughout the ride and finish strong. For a more in-depth video about pacing, why not check out the dedicated pacing video that's on the Lecole Cycling Club training pages. And then finally, why not document your ride with some photos and videos? It's always nice to celebrate an achievement and have something to look back and remember your ride by. Thank you for watching. Why not challenge yourself with our latest free to download training plan that's over on the Lecole Cycling Club pages right now.